The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I think he wants to lead the party, Mr. Speaker. While his Prime Minister leads the economy into a ditch, the high tax hypocrisy knows no bounds. Now First Nations are speaking up. First it was revolting Liberal MPs who were worried about losing their seats because of the Prime Minister's tax on home heat. Then it was other premiers refusing to collect the tax. Then it was farmers fighting for their ability to produce food without taxes. And now First Nations. Over 100 First Nations communities have taken this government to court because they're violating the rights of our First People with the carbon tax on rural and remote people. When will they stop violating the constitutional rights of First Nations and axe the tax?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, first of all, Mr. Speaker, they're not our First People. What they are First Nations, which are independent First Nations. And, Mr. Speaker, this government from no, they're not. Listen to that, Mr. Speaker. The colonialism in this place from the Conservatives just won't quit. I will say, Mr. Speaker, that we respect First Nations on this side. We know that they're leaders. That's why we've invested hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars in First Nations to ensure equity in water, in child welfare, and in housing, and we'll continue, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Nunavut.
I am raising on a point of order based on what the Conservative leader said today during his statements and his question period regarding First Peoples. He used a possessive term to mean that Indigenous peoples belong to another nation. And I just need to remind this House that First Nations, Inuit and Métis are not owned by governments, and that this Parliament needs to make sure that it's educating Canadians that we are not owned by governments. There were children in this House when he made that statement, and we need to remind Canadians that First Nations, Métis, and Inuit are First Peoples that are not owned by anyone, especially the Conservatives, and to also remind the Conservatives that when my colleague, the member for Winnipeg Centre, was making her intervention about genocide, Conservatives were laughing at her about her terms, her statement about genocide in this House. This Conservative Party needs to be reminded to respect First Nations, Métis, and Inuit.
Hear, 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 hear. Thank the member from Nunavut for her 2 points of intervention. The first, reminding this House and reminding all Canadians, of course, of the status and the importance of Canada's First Peoples, Inuit and Indigenous peoples. So I thank the honourable member for that. On the second matter, I will have to take this matter under revision, take a look at the videotape, and get back to the House if this is necessary. The honourable member from Battle River Crowfoot, rising on a point of order.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. On that point of order, it is really unfortunate that that member, while condemning Conservatives, refused to condemn the minister who used the exact same word in her reply. And, Speaker, I would quote from the Chiefs of Ontario, comprised of 133 Indigenous communities, that say, quote, Chiefs of Ontario and Atawaspack First Nation have filed a judicial review.
So, yeah. The honourable member from Battle River Crowfoot. I do appreciate it. We are now venturing well into debate on this issue for the member of Battle River Crowfoot. And there was not a debate on the point that the member was raising, but the honourable member from Crowfoot, Battle River Crowfoot, would like to make a new point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And on that point and your clarification, I would hope that I would be regarded the same respect as that member in allowing her to finish her statement. So I would hope that I would be regarded the same. And the fact that, and quoting, Mr. Speaker, that the
honourable member from Crowfoot to give me a second, please. I'm going to ask the member from Battle River Crowfoot if he can try to quickly get to his point, and if he could try to summarize this within about 10 to 15 seconds, please. It would be much appreciated.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It would be simply to say that the point that the Leader of the Opposition was making was exactly in support of First Nations, who have pointed out, in summary, Mr. Speaker, that the carbon tax has a disproportionate effect on First Nations. And, Mr. Speaker, it is shameful that other parties in this place would refuse to acknowledge that same fact and would try to play games as opposed to acknowledging that First Nations want the tax axed.
So we have now ventured well into debate on this point.